I hope you all noticed that vibrato in my voice. A lot of people consider it croaking, but no, it's a fine vibrato. Yeah. Uh, Here we are in May already. Where does the time go? From the hope of flowers and play on May Day to the celebration of Mother's Day to Memorial Day at the end of the month. It seems to be a month which is almost emblematic of our lives. It starts with a potential for joy and it progresses to a seeming need to redress past wrongs. It's a month in which we look for Mayflowers after April showers. It begins with a celebration of promise and ends with a memorial of life's accomplishments. The month and our lives are filled with contradictions between play and work, happiness and frustration, abundance and lack. May, as most months, begins on the 1st. However, the 1st of May is special. Many people think of May Day as something having to do with a dance around a pole. Now, this is distinct from a pole dance. Uh, this is a distinction with a definite difference. One is a celebration, and one is an unfortunate part of a biography of a congregant. However, we're going to talk about the celebration. Now, May Day was originally derived from pagan rites of nature. The day is roughly midway between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. It seemed like a good time for a pagan celebration. And over time, other traditions took over this celebration. The Romans used this time to celebrate Dionysius and Aphrodite, the party gods of Roman mythology. And that was in the Roman festival of Floralia. Later, the Roman Catholic Church decided to change that occasion to initiate May devotions to the Blessed Virgin Mary. In all of these celebrations, there was dancing and singing with the promise of joy, kindness, and potential. One of the traditions which has been sadly lost, sadly, I think, is the tradition of May baskets. The May baskets were filled with flowers and sweets, and then people would leave them anonymously on neighbors' doorsteps. It was a very, very vivid act of kindness. Now, the common thread running through all of these celebrations was the anticipation of a new joyful phase of life. However, May 1st is not just for fun. It is also International Workers' Day. International Workers' Day was begun as part of a labor movement to limit the workday to an 8-hour workday. The idea sprang up in Australia, I guess because it's so darned hot down under. But it got its impetus from America. On May 1st in 1886, there was a general strike and a protest at Haymarket Square in Chicago, which people were clamoring for an 8-hour workday. Well, things got a little out of hand, and someone threw a bomb at the police, and the police responded with gunfire, and it was a horrific event in which 7 police and 4 civilians were killed. Dozens were injured, maybe up to 100 folks. The Haymarket Riot, as it was called, became the focal point for the labor movement. Socialists adopted and promoted International Workers' Day on May 1st in remembrance of the Haymarket Riot. And this became an important holiday for communist countries throughout the world, as it turned out. In the US, in order to avoid that socialist stigma, Oregon began the ball rolling by declaring a Labor Day in September. And ironically, after businesses began adopting an 8-hour workday increasingly over the next 10 years or so, it turned out to be no real big deal. And in 1894, the president, Grover Cleveland, declared a national holiday for Labor Day in September. So we started Labor Day for the communists and the capitalists. How bipartisan can you get? Most countries, however, kept May 1st for their Labor Days. And even in the US, May 1st is often a symbolic day in which to begin labor strikes and boycotts. Occupy Wall Street was deliberately scheduled for May 1st. And so it's been an important day for labor all throughout the world and throughout the US. You ask, well, why are we revisiting the history of labor during a Unity Church service? Well, I think it's because it's important to remember the struggles of labor in the past to be productive without abuse and with reward. In Luke, we read that the goal is that the laborer is worthy of his hire. The Apostle Paul followed this up in 1 Corinthians with this goal: every man's work shall be made manifest. Work is important to people for their mental, productive, and yes, their spiritual well-being. Many religions accommodate this. One of the eightfold paths in Buddhism is right work. The Protestant work ethic is embedded into the American culture. And in conjunction with International Workers' Day on May 1st, the Catholic Church has gone so far as to designate Saint Joseph, Jesus's father, as the patron saint of workers and craftsmen. The spiritual well-being can be imbued at a young age. Like many of you, I would suspect we're all of an age where it's not unusual. I have a long work history. I was substituting for paper routes and developing my own paper routes beginning at 10 years old. I mowed lawns. At age 14, I got a work permit and became an electrician's helper one summer. And believe it or not, back then I was so small that I came in handy for running wire through the attics and crawl spaces. Really nasty jobs. And most summers I worked construction. It was hard. These summers gave me a sense of responsibility and an appreciation for hard work. And these summers also gave me an insight into Martin Luther King's advice on self-esteem and spiritual balance, in which he said to do your job excellently, even if you're a janitor. And these summers also clarified some things that I never wanted to do again. I'll bet quite a few of us have had that experience. So I know that work at a young age does have benefits. There's no doubt in my mind. Yet I believe that we are sliding into a spiritual hole about what we are contemplating asking our children to do this May. In the recent past, I'm talking about maybe in the past decade or so, we have circumscribed the work that minor children can do for employers and how long they can be asked to do it. And perhaps we've gone overboard with it. In some cases, we need to imbue our kids with that appreciation of the benefits of hard work. However, the present emerging labor shortages have employers and legislators thinking and reversing course on this and perhaps swinging the pendulum back a little too hard. Let me give you a few examples. In Idaho, legislators are considering letting 16-year-olds work with chainsaws in logging camps. Lefty thinks this is a good idea, but he's limited. In 11 states, including Virginia, children from Guatemala were discovered working on dangerous equipment in meatpacking plants. Some had been human trafficked, and some were as young as 13 years old. In Iowa and Arkansas, they think this is bad, and they've decided to address this by requiring that minors be at least 14 before they work in meatpacking plants. Michigan and Wisconsin want to allow 14-year-olds to serve alcohol. Now, I don't know how many will get jobs at Hooters, but what can go wrong? And finally, in Louisiana, legislation has been introduced that employers would not be required to give minors a lunch break on the jobs. Now, looking at the legislators in Louisiana, New Orleans is famous for their cooking. I don't think many of them have missed many lunches. Now, these might be changes which are well-intentioned. The kids get experience and they might bring a few bucks home. I'm not going to talk about their intentions, but I worry that we are becoming like Rachel in the book of Matthew. Rachel, weeping for her children and would not be comforted because they are not. It is your decisions, your choices for yourselves, your neighbors, and your kids, which can impact whether we dance in May or fear the lack of services that lead to unfortunate consequences. Are you following Jesus's great commandment to love God, to love your neighbor as well as yourself? Do the children play into that? Do your choices make human trafficking easier or harder? And finally, do you endorse a golden mean? Or do you want to continue the trial and error of a swinging spiritual pendulum? Well, in Unity, we endorse an integration of the practical with the spiritual. We do not make decisions based on a lack or a fear of a lack, but rather with a positive outlook of improvement. In Ecclesiastes, we learn that nothing in life is better than to eat, to drink, and to enjoy our toil. This May, let's integrate our spirituality to fulfill May's hope. Make dance, flowers, kindness, and labor the common things that we extract our happiness from. And in conclusion, let's remember a quote from H. Jackson Brown Jr. Live so that when your children think of fairness, caring, and integrity, they think of you. Amen and thank you.